Have you ever wondered how seemingly incompetent individuals rise to positions of immense influence? The manager who can barely organize their desk yet receives promotion after promotion. The politician whose empty promises win elections. The celebrity CEO whose company loses money while their personal brand flourishes. It's a pattern we've witnessed throughout history. Charles II of Spain, ruling one of history's largest empires despite barely being able to speak coherently. Or modern tech founders building billion-dollar valuations on products that never materialize. We're told that competence, intelligence, and hard work are the keys to advancement, yet reality often tells a different story. What if power depends less on what you know and more on the face you present to the world? Today, we're exploring one of history's most misunderstood political philosophers, Niccolo Machiavelli, and his brutally honest insights about the masks people wear to obtain and maintain power. We all wear masks, but in the realm of power, some masks are weaponized. Leaders promise the world while hiding incompetence behind charisma. CEOs radiate confidence even as their companies falter. In the theater of leadership, it's not the substance of ability, but the illusion of strength that often wins the crowd. Before diving into Machiavelli's insights, we must understand the man himself. Born in 1469 in Florence, Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't the villain history has painted him as. He served as a dedicated public servant for 14 years before the Medici family overthrew the Florentine Republic in 1512. Suddenly powerless, imprisoned, tortured, and eventually exiled, he wrote his most famous work, The Prince. The historical context of Machiavelli's writing is crucial to understanding his true intentions. Renaissance Italy was a dangerous patchwork of city-states caught between French, Spanish, and papal ambitions. Florence had cycled through multiple governments in Machiavelli's lifetime alone, witnessing the rise and fall of Savonarola's religious extremism, Republican experimentation, and Medici domination. Unlike contemporary political theorists who wrote idealistic treatises based on abstract principles, Machiavelli grounded his analysis in historical evidence and direct observation. His formative diplomatic missions brought him face-to-face with the era's most consequential figures. He observed Pope Alexander VI's ruthless manipulation of Italian politics, witnessed Cesare Borgia's brilliant but ultimately doomed quest to unite central Italy, and watched Pope Julius II transform from cardinal to warrior pope. These experiences gave him an unfiltered view of power's mechanics that few scholars before or since have possessed. What truly distinguished Machiavelli was his willingness to describe politics as it actually operated rather than as moral philosophers wished it would. In an era when political writing focused on how rulers should behave according to Christian virtue, Machiavelli dared to analyze how successful rulers actually behaved, and the psychological tactics they employed to maintain power. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. This crucial insight reveals Machiavelli's fundamental understanding of human psychology. People evaluate others primarily through appearances rather than direct experience of their abilities. He wasn't advocating deception, he was describing power's actual mechanics, stripped of moral fantasies. Research by Princeton psychologists Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov demonstrated that people form first impressions from facial appearances in as little as 1/10 of a second, and these snap judgments persist even when contradicted by later evidence. Consider Bernie Madoff, whose carefully cultivated image of financial brilliance masked history's largest investment fraud. His persona, impeccable suits, prestigious office address, seemingly exclusive client list, created such a powerful impression of competence that investors ignored warning signs for decades. Behind this facade of expertise lay his true operation, a massive Ponzi scheme that collapsed only when the 2008 financial crisis triggered unprecedented withdrawal requests. By the time his mask fell, thousands of lives had been devastated. Have you noticed yourself influenced by someone's polished presentation despite harboring doubts about their substance? That's this principle operating in your own mind. But what specific masks help people who lack substance rise to power? Let's examine the psychological wardrobe that Machiavelli identified centuries before modern behavioral science gave these phenomena names. Machiavelli famously advised that a successful ruler must know when to embody both the lion and the fox, perhaps his most enduring metaphor about power. A prince must know how to use the nature of the beast he should choose from the fox and the lion, for the lion cannot defend itself from traps, and the fox cannot defend itself from wolves. While Machiavelli was describing genuine qualities of effective leadership, this metaphor has been weaponized by incompetent leaders throughout history. They don't actually possess these qualities, they merely imitate them, wearing them as masks to conceal their limitations. The lion mask represents the appearance of strength and intimidation without actual courage or capability. The fox mask mimics cleverness and adaptability while hiding a lack of genuine strategic thinking. Together, they create a powerful illusion of competence that can fool even astute observers. Napoleon Bonaparte's rise demonstrates how these performative masks can create the impression of brilliance even when substance is lacking. His lion mask wasn't just about battlefield courage, it was carefully staged theater. His famous portraits crossing the Alps showed him heroically astride a rearing stallion when the actual crossing was far more mundane. He cultivated an image of military genius while often relying heavily on subordinates for tactical innovation, taking credit for their successes while distancing himself from failures. Meanwhile, his fox mask concealed impulsive decision-making behind a veneer of strategic brilliance. His propaganda machine portrayed constant warfare as part of a grand design rather than increasingly desperate attempts to maintain power. When facing criticism about the disastrous Russian campaign, he reframed catastrophic losses as merely temporary setbacks, shifting blame to weather conditions rather than his own strategic overreach. Napoleon's true genius wasn't military strategy but performance management, knowing when to wear each mask depending on his audience. With soldiers, he played the fearless lion, personally inspecting front lines and appearing immune to danger. With diplomats and politicians, he adopted the cunning fox, appearing to maneuver 10 steps ahead when often he was improvising. This pattern repeats with modern leaders who lack substance but excel at performance. CEOs who project lion-like authority in public while privately admitting they don't understand their company's operations. Politicians who display fox-like strategic pivots that are actually desperate attempts to conceal their lack of consistent principles. What makes these masks particularly effective is how they tap into our psychological desire for strong, competent leadership. We want to believe the performance because the alternative, that our leaders might be fundamentally incompetent, is too threatening to our sense of security. In your own experiences, how often have you encountered leaders wearing these masks? Perhaps the manager who roars with confidence in meetings but can't actually deliver results, or the colleague who presents themselves as strategically brilliant while constantly changing direction to cover mistakes. These aren't genuine lions or foxes, they're performers wearing masks designed to conceal their limitations. Have you noticed how confidently expressed opinions often dominate discussions regardless of their merit? This isn't coincidental. It's a psychological pattern creating powerful advantages for individuals willing to project absolute certainty. Studies by Don Moore and colleagues reveal that overconfident individuals are perceived as more competent, even when their actual knowledge is lacking. In experiments, participants preferred advice from confident advisors despite their lower accuracy, illustrating how confidence often trumps competence in credibility judgments. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. While this statement might sound elitist today, Machiavelli was making a universal psychological observation. We all possess cognitive biases making us susceptible to confident performances. Kenneth Lay's leadership at Enron provides a compelling case study of the certainty mask in action. As concerns about Enron's accounting practices emerged, Lay didn't just deny problems, he doubled down with absolute conviction. In a now infamous company-wide meeting in August 2001, he declared Enron's fundamentals the strongest they've ever been, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. When an employee dared question the company's financial health, Lay dismissed their concerns with unwavering certainty, proclaiming, "I have never felt better about the company." This wasn't merely optimism. It was a calculated performance of certainty designed to maintain employee morale and investor confidence. Lay's mask remained intact, even as he encouraged employees to buy more Enron stock while executives quietly sold their own shares. When interviewed by financial analysts, his unshakable confidence in Enron's innovative business model deflected deeper scrutiny of the company's increasingly questionable accounting. What made Lay's certainty mask so effective was its consistency across audiences, whether addressing employees, investors, or the media. He maintained the same unwavering conviction in Enron's success. This uniform certainty created an impression of authenticity that prolonged the company's existence months after its financial reality should have triggered collapse. In your own experiences, how often have you deferred to someone speaking with absolute confidence, even when part of you questioned their expertise? That's the certainty mask's influence. But confidence alone isn't enough for sustained power. The most effective power seekers understand that they need to create the appearance of being exactly what their audience wants to see, a chameleon-like ability that constitutes our next mask. Machiavelli observed that successful rulers adapt their appearance to whatever their audience needs to see, a psychological technique modern researchers call high self-monitoring. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This insight reveals a crucial aspect of power acquisition, the ability to present different faces to different audiences. While authentic leaders maintain consistent identities, those most skilled at acquiring power often shapeshift according to context. In the political realm, Bill Clinton exemplified this chameleon quality. With Southern religious voters, he spoke of his Baptist upbringing and faith. With urban progressives, he emphasized his commitment to diversity and social programs. Meeting with Wall Street executives, he discussed financial deregulation and market efficiency. With blue-collar workers, he conveyed understanding of economic struggles through his own humble beginnings. What made Clinton's chameleon mask remarkable wasn't just versatility. It was his ability to make each version feel authentic. His legendary empathy allowed him to genuinely connect with wildly different audiences, creating what journalist Joe Klein called 1,000 points of identification. This wasn't merely calculated manipulation. Clinton seemed to genuinely inhabit each role momentarily, a psychological phenomenon psychologists call situational self. The effectiveness of Clinton's adaptive persona became evident during crises that would have destroyed less flexible politicians. When scandals emerged, his ability to recalibrate his public image, expressing contrition without surrendering authority, allowed him to maintain high approval ratings even during impeachment proceedings. Behind these adapted personas lay a consistent core: pragmatic political ambition and genuine policy interests that remained largely unchanged despite his chameleonic public performances. Have you ever found yourself unconsciously shifting your personality in different professional or social contexts? That's the chameleon principle at work in your own life. While adapting to different audiences helps gain initial power, maintaining influence requires another skill: the strategic management of information to shape perception without outright lying. One of Machiavelli's most profound insights concerns the relationship between perception, truth, and power. He recognized that effective leaders carefully manage what information they share and withhold, not necessarily through outright fabrication, but through strategic disclosure. The great majority of mankind is satisfied with appearances, as though they were realities, and are often more influenced by things that seem than by those that are. This observation highlights how selective presentation of truth shapes public perception. Modern communication researchers call this strategic ambiguity, the practice of revealing certain facts while obscuring others to create advantageous impressions without crossing into demonstrable falsehood. Leslie John's research on strategic disclosure shows that leaders who delay or contextualize negative information are perceived as more trustworthy than those who share all facts up front, even when the same information is ultimately revealed. Jeff Bezos has masterfully applied this principle at Amazon. When announcing ambitious initiatives like drone delivery or cashierless stores, Amazon provides compelling visuals and specific details about consumer benefits, same-day delivery by air, frictionless shopping experiences, while remaining strategically vague about implementation challenges and timelines. This creates a perception of technological inevitability that benefits the company's innovation narrative without committing to specific deadlines that might later prove embarrassing. This strategic disclosure becomes even more evident in how Amazon addresses workplace controversies. When criticized about warehouse working conditions, Amazon responds with precisely selected metrics, highlighting total jobs created, average hourly wages, and benefits packages, while contextualizing or reframing less favorable statistics about injury rates, turnover, or productivity quotas. The company's communications emphasize certain truths while minimizing others, creating an impression of comprehensive transparency while actually controlling the narrative. What makes this mask particularly effective is that it rarely requires outright falsehood. As journalists Brad Stone documented in Amazon Unbound, Amazon's selective transparency relies on emphasizing technically accurate information while subtly directing attention away from less flattering realities. This approach allowed Amazon to maintain its consumer-friendly image even as investigative reporting revealed increasingly concerning labor practices. When have you practiced selective disclosure in your professional or personal life? Perhaps emphasizing certain accomplishments on your resume while minimizing setbacks. These common practices reflect Machiavelli's insights about strategic truth management. But maintaining power requires more than just managing information. It also requires managing the psychological distance between yourself and others, our next crucial mask. Another of Machiavelli's profound insights concerns the balance between accessibility and mystery. He recognized that effective rulers maintain careful distance that generates respect while avoiding the familiarity that might breed contempt. It is far safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This provocative statement has been misinterpreted as advocacy for cruelty. What Machiavelli actually observed was that emotional control and strategic distance often preserve authority better than attempts to be universally liked. Antonakis and Atwater's research on leader distance reveals that maintaining moderate interpersonal space, close enough to build rapport but distant enough to preserve authority, optimizes perceived effectiveness. Anna Wintour, Vogue's legendary editor-in-chief, has elevated strategic distance to an art form. Her trademark dark sunglasses create literal visual barriers between herself and others, while her carefully rationed public appearances maintain an aura of exclusivity. She rarely grants interviews and speaks with deliberate brevity when she does, creating an impression of someone whose time and attention are extraordinarily valuable. This strategic inaccessibility extends to her professional relationships. Former assistants describe Wintour's habit of making minimal eye contact during conversations and delivering feedback in terse, unelaborated directives. Yet these same accounts note occasional, carefully selected moments of warmth and personal attention that seem more meaningful precisely because of their rarity. What makes Winter's distance mask particularly effective is its consistency. She maintains the same composed demeanor whether facing criticism or praise. This emotional equilibrium creates an impression of someone operating beyond normal human reactivity, enhancing her mythic status in an industry built on perception. The power of Wintar's strategic distance is most evident in how others respond to her presence. The documentary The September Issue captures fashion industry professionals, themselves powerful figures, visibly anxious before her arrival and desperately seeking her approval. This reaction stems not from explicit threats, but from the psychological power her carefully maintained distance creates. Consider your own reactions to leaders who maintain some personal distance versus those who share everything. Which do you ultimately respect more? For most people, some degree of mystery enhances rather than diminishes perceived competence. Even the most skilled performers sometimes face failures. What distinguishes masters of power is not avoiding failure, but transforming it into strength through our next critical mask. Perhaps Machiavelli's most profound insight was understanding how skilled power players reinterpret their own failures and limitations as strengths. Rather than hiding weaknesses, they reframe them within narratives that transform liabilities into assets. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are. This observation reveals how appearances can be actively managed through storytelling. The most effective masks aren't physical disguises, but narrative constructions that reinterpret reality. Studies have found that entrepreneurs who frame failures as learning experiences secure more funding than those who hide setbacks, as redemption narratives signal resilience to investors. Richard Branson has masterfully employed narrative reframing throughout his career. When Virgin Atlantic faced near bankruptcy in its early years, Branson didn't conceal these struggles. He transformed them into the foundation of Virgin's underdog mythology. His autobiography recounts how he personally called credit card companies to delay payments and negotiated with Boeing to postpone aircraft deliveries, recasting what could have been seen as financial mismanagement into a heroic tale of entrepreneurial persistence. This narrative control extended to Virgin's many failed ventures. When Virgin Cola failed to challenge Coca-Cola, or when Virgin Brides struggled to gain traction, Branson incorporated these setbacks into his broader narrative of bold risk-taking. In media interviews, he famously stated, "Business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming." This rhetorical framing transformed what could have been viewed as scattered attention or poor judgment into evidence of adventurous spirit. What makes Branson's narrative mask particularly effective is how it aligns with proven psychological principles. Research in autobiographical memory shows that people who construct redemptive narratives around failures, stories that transform negative experiences into meaningful growth, demonstrate greater resilience and are perceived as more authentic leaders. Behind this carefully constructed narrative mask lay business realities that might otherwise have undermined Branson's image. Numerous failed ventures, high debt levels, and questionable strategic decisions. Yet his masterful storytelling transformed these potential liabilities into the very foundation of his popular appeal. When you've experienced setbacks, do you hide them or integrate them into your personal narrative? The most convincing masks aren't those that hide flaws, but those that reinterpret them as virtues. Understanding these masks explains how incompetent individuals gain power, but certain environments make these techniques particularly effective. Let's examine when and where masks work best. Machiavelli recognized that certain conditions make appearance-based leadership more likely to succeed. Not all environments equally reward style over substance. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. This insight reveals a crucial environmental factor. Contexts where accountability is delayed or diffuse allow masks to persist longer than environments with immediate feedback. Mindell's Romance of Leadership theory explains why ambiguous, complex, or crisis-driven environments favor charismatic leaders over competent ones, as people crave decisive figures during uncertainty. The story of Adam Neumann and WeWork perfectly illustrates how certain environments enable performance masks to flourish unchecked. Neumann transformed WeWork from a single co-working space in 2010 to a company valued at $47 billion by 2019 through a carefully constructed persona that combined tech visionary with spiritual guru. WeWork's meteoric rise occurred in an economic environment perfectly suited for mask over substance leadership. Ultra-low interest rates created investor desperation for growth opportunities, while the tech industry's halo effect allowed WeWork to position itself as a technology platform rather than a real estate company, despite fundamentally being in the office leasing business. Neumann crafted an image that transcended mere business leadership. With his distinctive appearance, long hair, no shoes in meetings, casual attire amid corporate suits, he presented himself as a countercultural prophet rather than a conventional CEO. His rhetoric expanded from providing office space to elevating the world's consciousness and creating a world where people work to make a life, not just a living. This grandiose vision was supported by carefully orchestrated public appearances showing him surfing with celebrities, meditating with spiritual leaders, and delivering messianic speeches at company events. Most crucially, information asymmetry allowed this performance to persist. Major investors like SoftBank's Vision Fund provided social proof that attracted others, while WeWork's status as a private company limited financial transparency. Complex corporate structures obscured troubling governance issues, including Neumann's self-dealing through purchasing buildings and leasing them back to WeWork. When external conditions changed, specifically when the IPO process forced transparent disclosure, WeWork's valuation collapsed from $47 billion to under $5 billion in weeks, and Neumann was removed from leadership. The masks that thrived in private markets couldn't withstand public scrutiny. This case underscores a timeless truth captured by Machiavelli. Power masks do not exist in isolation. They depend on specific conditions to survive, conditions that, once altered, can quickly expose even the most convincing performances. While these insights might seem cynical, they actually provide valuable tools for both protecting ourselves from manipulation and creating systems that select for genuine merit. Understanding Machiavelli's insights doesn't mean surrendering to cynicism. Instead, it empowers us to design better systems and develop personal defenses against manipulation. At the individual level, 3 practices help us see through power masks. First, focus on track records over first impressions. The pre-mortem technique, developed by psychologist Gary Klein, offers a powerful application of this principle. Before making important decisions about whom to trust, imagine their approach has failed and ask what would have caused this outcome. This cognitive exercise helps penetrate performance masks by focusing on concrete risks rather than persuasive presentations. Second, cultivate diverse information sources. Research at Princeton's Department of Psychology shows that exposure to multiple perspectives significantly reduces susceptibility to charismatic but substance-free messaging. Third, practice intellectual humility. Research on metacognitive debiasing shows that reflecting on past persuasion attempts, like analyzing why you trusted a charismatic leader, builds resistance to future manipulation through enhanced awareness of our own cognitive vulnerabilities. Despite his reputation for cynicism, Machiavelli ultimately believed in wisdom over showmanship. By acknowledging reality clearly, including our own vulnerability to masks, we gain power to make better choices. At the systemic level, Organizations can implement structured assessment processes and create meaningful probationary periods for leaders. Google's hiring practices demonstrate how standardized questions, multiple interviewers, and quantitative scoring rubrics reduce the advantage of candidates skilled at impression management but lacking substantive abilities. As we conclude our exploration, let's examine practical steps to either see through masks or, when necessary, craft our own authentic ones. Machiavelli's insights are more than theoretical. They offer a roadmap for navigating the complex realities of power and perception. Understanding the dynamics of masks, both the ones others wear and those we craft for ourselves, leads to practical strategies for defending against manipulation and expressing authenticity with intention. The journey begins with self-awareness. To resist manipulation, we must first examine the masks that influence us. Consider asking yourself, which personas or performances do I find most persuasive, and what emotional needs do they tap into? When have I mistaken appearance for substance, and what made me susceptible? Keeping a mask journal to document these moments can build a kind of psychological immune system. Next, develop mask literacy, the ability to decode performances, particularly in positions of leadership. Pay attention to absolutist language like always and never, vague claims backed by experts say, and evasiveness where detail would be expected. Former FBI counterintelligence agent Joe Navarro emphasized that the clearest indicators of deception aren't usually facial. They're in the misalignment of tone, gesture, and content. When someone's communication channels don't harmonize, the mask often begins to slip. On a broader scale, we can design environments that limit the power of deceptive masks. Ray Dalio's idea meritocracy at Bridgewater Associates offers a powerful example. By building a culture where any employee, regardless of rank, could challenge leadership provided they brought evidence, Dalio constructed a firm where performance was constantly measured against truth, not charm. But Machiavelli's lessons are not solely for defense. They can also guide us toward authentic power. Rather than rejecting all performance, we can craft masks that highlight our real strengths while acknowledging specific limitations. This creates authenticity that feels powerful without being manipulative, finding bridges between your truth and the emotional truths of others. The difference between an authentic mask and a manipulative one lies not in technique, but in intention. Are we trying to inflate our image beyond what we truly are? Or are we helping others see a value they might otherwise miss? Sometimes the act of becoming begins with performance. Wearing the mask of our ideal self may not be falsehood. It may be the first step toward transformation. Machiavelli has been mischaracterized for centuries as an advocate for deception. In reality, he was a keen observer of human nature who recognized the gap between how power should work and how it actually does. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. This profound insight reveals Machiavelli's deeper belief. True authority comes not from masks, but from the substance beneath them. The most enduring legacy isn't created by those who merely appear great, but by those who actually are. History ultimately distinguishes between leaders who wore masks to serve themselves and those who used them in service of something greater. Martin Luther King Jr.'s carefully crafted public persona served the civil rights movement. Their masks amplified rather than replaced their substance. Perhaps the most important masks to examine are our own. How often do we present certainty when we should acknowledge doubt? How frequently do we adapt our presentation to win approval, rather than speak uncomfortable truths? How readily do we blame circumstances for failures we should own? By understanding the masks we all wear, we gain the power to choose when appearance should serve substance rather than replace it. We can create communities where authentic competence ultimately matters more than performance. The path forward isn't pretending masks don't exist or matter. It's understanding them deeply enough to ensure they serve worthy purposes rather than merely personal advancement. It's designing systems that can see beyond dazzling performances to identify genuine capability. Most importantly, it's recognizing that while masks may sometimes win power, the legacies worth building are those constructed on foundations more substantial than appearances alone. Now I'm curious, what masks have you encountered in your own life? Have you seen leaders or colleagues hide their true intentions behind convincing performances? When have you spotted someone's mask slip, revealing the gap between their carefully crafted image and reality? If you found value in this exploration, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it or benefit from it. Sometimes a new perspective is all it takes to see the masks for what they truly are. And if you'd like to dive deeper into the hidden psychology of power and influence, subscribe to our channel. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and remember, understanding the masks others wear gives you the power to see the truth behind the performance.